Ready to go live. Here we are. I think we are live again. I apologise for that. We had some sort of, I don't know, badgers eating the wires or some weird thing happened here in rural England and we all disappeared, but we are back. I understand that Imogen and Tracy have told you about the lovely places they live, so I will gallop on talking about our books. So Tracy and I both write quite dark novels, really, but Imogen, yours are much more upbeat. That's what readers really like about your books. They're quite uplifting. And I was wondering, has that been difficult for you in this sort of, in this current time with all this rather sort of dark, slightly miserable stuff going on? Have you found yourself still able to sort of achieve that upbeat mood in your books when you've been writing?
It's interesting because I think to begin with, back in March when it all went very dark, it was quite difficult. But then I just sort of lost myself in my stories, and you kind of forget, I think, when you're working, what's going on everywhere else. So I was able to just press on. And I didn't have to do any of the ferrying of the children around the place, so I had plenty of time. So actually, it wasn't as difficult as I thought it was going to be. And I also made sure I read lots of more cheerful books rather than darker ones that I might normally read, which helped me to try and keep that mood light.
Yeah, so it was good escape for you because you managed to read as well. That's quite impressive. A lot of people were saying they couldn't really manage to read.
Well, it was almost, once we decided that we weren't all going to die, then it was actually quite nice because my family were all in this house together, and we had space. Everyone was busy doing their own thing, and all I had to do was make sure everyone was fed and clean, and so the rest of the time I was left to my own devices, and my favourite things to do are write and read, so that's what I did.
Good. Well, I'm pleased I'm pleased that worked out for you. Tracy and I actually first met on a writer's retreat. Yeah. And I was writing The Last to Know, or the thing that turned into The Last to Know. And Tracy, I think you were writing Wall of Silence.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
In this sort of, again, a very sort of rural place. We were there in sort of deepest, darkest Wales, in this beautiful, beautiful place. And I wonder, is that what you need to be able to write? Do you need that kind of solitude?
It helps nowadays. I used to be able to write with the TV on in the background. I think it's because I was working, so I had to fit it in as much as I possibly could. But nowadays I've got a child, and I've got I've got lots of things to do around the house and stuff. So I do need that solitude. And oh my God, I wish we were back at that retreat, because to have that, to be innocent of everything that's gone on since then would have been amazing. So yeah, I definitely do. And I have struggled during lockdown. My little girl, she's just turned 7. And obviously here in the UK, the kids have been off school since April, March, I think. And luckily my husband's been off for a few months. He's a woodworker, so he's been doing a lot of woodwork stuff at home. So he's been able to homeschool her. But I can hear them downstairs. So it's really hard when you're writing like a really intense, deep scene, and you can either hear them arguing or hear them splashing about in the pool outside. It's really hard to get into that headspace. So I have struggled, but luckily Wall of Silence was out. It came out in March, just as this all was all kicking off. So I kind of had a lot of launch marketing stuff to do, and getting back to readers and talking to people. So it's not been too bad, but yeah, the writing thing has been really tough. And it
was amazing. I was amazed by how productive I was on that writer's retreat, because I've always had this idea that I can only write a certain number of words each day. It's like that's my capacity. But I found that, I think, because if you were in the flow, you could just carry on and nothing was going to interrupt you, like you said. But equally, if I was sort of struggling a tiny bit, I could just go out for sort of a quick little walk and clear my head. I mean, it was kind of the perfect combination. Plus, we had somebody cooking all our meals for us. So, I almost thought sometimes that it was a bit like, it's no surprise that so many sort of Victorian gentlemen wrote novels, because they basically just had a whole staff of people running around after them. And if we all had that, life would be so much easier, wouldn't it?
Yes. Oh my gosh, it would be lovely. Have you been on any retreats, Imogen? Have you been?
I have been on a couple down in the southwest of England, and found exactly that you've just got time and you can do whatever. So since then, I take myself off, and quite regularly take myself to a hotel for a few days and just sit and write. And it's usually somewhere where I want to set a book. So I mosey around the place, find some good locations for the things that I need, and then in the afternoons I write. and I'm planning as we speak, because I've been stuck here for so long, to go somewhere. I don't quite know where yet, but I'm definitely going to go, because I think if you do get those blocks of concentrated time that are uninterrupted, it's amazing how much you can get done. And because I don't plot and I don't outline, if it's constantly being picked up and put back down again, it's really hard to remember where I am and what I'm doing. So nice big long blocks of time, fabulous, can't beat them.
How do you pick your settings, Imogen? Because I know the recent novel, the last piece, went all the way off to Greece. It was sort of in the UK and Greece. Was that just because you wanted to go and stay in a lovely hotel in Greece, or was there kind of a narrative there as well?
The settings tend to be driven by the story, obviously, because they need to be. But once I've got the kind of idea of where I need it to be, then they often tend to be places I like to go. And I'm very fond of the sea. So there's a theme. The last two, I think, ones, apart from the last piece, were both set by the sea, so that I can go and do a retreat by the sea, basically. So that's a bit of a theme. How about you?
Yeah, I'm the same. I mean, I seem to be inspired by everywhere I moved. My last few years, sort of in my real life, as it were, have been quite disruptive in terms of sort of living in one place and moving again and moving. I've moved twice in the last 3 years, and I've basically written a novel in each of those places. So I think the sort of the novelty of a new setting for me is really powerful. I just find that in the first, even if I go on holiday, I'll have this huge kind of rush of ideas, of new story ideas. They're not all necessarily actually to do with the place. Sometimes they are, but sometimes it's almost like the new setting. It's like meeting new people, really. You know, I just get this big sort of boom of ideas, and obviously, you know, three of them have turned into novels, happily.
I think that's why lockdown has been so difficult.
Yeah.
Because without travelling and without going to see places, ideas gradually started to whittle down, and there's a limit to what you can do when everything's 2D or on a screen or from your reading. And when I realised that my characters were all starting to sound like my children, I thought I needed to get somewhere else, because it's really rich being outside in different places. That's where ideas come from, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Not enough input and too much output. And I have to say, when I saw the cover of your book, Tracy, Wall of Silence, because the cover of that book is trees, just literally trees, and it made me think of that retreat, because the house was right up against the trees. So what about your settings? Where are you inspired by?
Well, actually, before Wall of Silence, all of my books before then have been based by the sea. So it's interesting as you talking about the sea, because it's always been my inspiration. But I think I've written, I think, 6 or 7 books by the sea, and I was getting to that place where I needed a new location to inspire me. So every twice a year, me and my family, we go to a place in the UK called the Forest Holidays, and they're little patches around the UK, like lovely holiday parks, and you just have a log cabin, and there's other log cabins, but they're really nicely set apart, and there's a little sort of forest retreat where you can get some food and stuff, but it really is an escape. And I was sitting there one day and just looking out of the window, I thought, this community came to me, this idea of what if you lived in the middle of a forest. And that was it. It was enough just to have this different location away from the sea location, to start, all these ideas started exploding. So I do think a lot of authors, you need that. And that's why you find a lot of authors will change direction a little bit. So they might change location or change, because you just need that constant inspiration. Yeah,
I was going to say, did you feel after writing 6 novels on the coast that you just needed to mix it up? You just needed to change.
Yeah, and the thing is, I've still managed to get the coast in. So anyone who's read Wall of Silence, it's still in there. It's somewhere, and it has to be in little tiny little pockets of it. So I can never quite get away from it. But yeah, it was important for me. And going on this retreat that we went on, in the mornings I went on walks through the forest, and it was so beautiful. And it just really helped me get into the mindset of this forest grove, the community that I've set Wall of Silence in. It's just this idea that what trees can do. They can hide things. They look beautiful, but there are things that could be rotting at the core, and strange things that can be happening. And I saw a fox, actually, when we were there. I saw a fox in the distance. So yeah, it was really, really great to
change. Deer there as well, weren't there? I remember they, like, early in the morning and late at night, all the deer would come, and it was like getting getting a glimpse into this secret little world, because they've got their own soap opera going on. You know, there was all kinds of little things going on between these deer. But yeah, I'm the same with the forest. My first novel, All the Little Children, that was set in a forest, and I got quite fascinated by the way that your relationship to the forest can sort of change. So at the beginning, because they were going camping in the forest and they'd never done that before, the forest was a place that was quite fearful. You know, they were scared of what was behind the trees and the darkness between the trees. And then as the plot sort of kicked in and something terrible was happening outside, suddenly the forest became actually their place of refuge. That was the place that they felt safe. You know, and so that relationship sort of switched and changed, which was quite nice. I should say hello to Cynthia, because Cynthia McLean has joined us. Her comment has popped up. If you do have any more questions that you would like to ask Tracy or Imogen or myself, you can pop them in the comments and I will pass them on. The joy actually of Lake Union, I think, a little bit, is that it's a very global. Hello, Julie. Hi, thank you for coming along. Is that it's a very global publisher. So when our books are published, they are instantly they come out instantly in the UK, the US, Australia, India, all these different places, in a way that, you know, that's different to some traditional publishers, where you might be published first, say in the UK, and then you might sell an edition in the US, and they would actually make a different edition, possibly with a different cover, probably with a different edit. But our books have to sort of cover all of those places, and they have to sort of tread that multicultural line, really. And I wondered whether that's something that you sort of consider when you're writing, the fact that you are writing for quite a global audience. Imogen, what do you think?
I took a decision quite early on that my books were going to be very English. Okay. And so they are very English. I use English turns of phrase. I use English, British spelling. They have high tea in them, and they, you know, very English cakes, very English things. And I take the view that that's what I know best. And even if I were to be in a different location on a holiday for a couple of weeks, I feel that I don't feel qualified to write just based on a couple of weeks holiday from that place, other than as an English person being there and looking and observing what they see. So that's the way that I do it. And I think if you're from a different country, you're interested in how life is in England, then my books are for you. And if you'd rather that it was more familiar to where you are, then perhaps they wouldn't be. But that's how I do it. They're very, very English.
Do you feel you have to sort of explain English cultural stuff, or do you just kind of go with it and hope that it becomes clear in the context? And I do sometimes get I get messages from readers, particularly in America, who will say, "Oh, I particularly like that word," or "I didn't really know what that was, but I do now. I looked it up." Because, you know, with the internet, you can look up anything, can't you? And, you know, even the dictionary within the Kindle gives details of English words and American words, and so it's not that difficult to work out, and usually the context will explain, and it is the same language, so, you know, the language is fine. And then things like the way the education system works in England, or the things that just are day to day for us, I think, well, that's what I know, and that's where my book is set, so that's how I do it. Yeah. What about you, Tracy? Are you very English?
No, actually, because my books before were quite global. So my debut novel, The Atlas of Us, is based around all the different places that I've visited, because I used to be a travel editor. But actually, I've written about places I haven't been to. So it's quite, and just using my imagination and looking at, speaking to people who've been to the places, things like watching YouTube, going on to the BBC. So it's quite a different approach. And interestingly, with Forest Grove, which is the setting for Wall of Silence, I had messages from readers asking, is it based in the US or the UK? Because I deliberately tried to keep it quite ambiguous. I wanted people to feel like it could be a community that's down the road from them. So yeah, it's always something that I've done, but it's actually quite refreshing for me to be writing somewhere that's just writing about somewhere based in one place, which I haven't. You know, there's always different places in my books. So it's quite nice to really focus on that claustrophobic sort of community feel. But I find it really interesting how authors take different approaches. So Imogen is very much British, you know, writing what she knows. and where I do try and make it a little bit global. Something else that strikes me, and readers probably laugh at this, is that I find that American readers are much more worried about swearing stuff. So that's something I'm trying to take into account, whereas us Brits are just swearing left, right, and centre. But
terrible.
So I am being with Lake Union. I've certainly taken a much more global view and trying to be more global in the way I write.
Yeah, that's interesting what you say about that you will write about a place that you've never been. And I've got I almost feel like I should confess to Imogen, because I think the only place that I've written that I've never been, like the place that I just researched using, Google Maps, is Whitby, which is where my first novel finishes. And I know it's just down the road from you. And you set whole novels in Whitby. So I was, when I first met you, I was thinking, oh gosh, I'm kind of hoping she doesn't read my first novel. In case I've just got this street in completely the wrong place. Like, you'll catch me out.
Well, I do find that street maps and Google Earth and all that kind of stuff is fab, and I will write about places that I haven't been to, but not necessarily places. I wouldn't set a whole novel in a different culture without having been there.
It's more the culture than the place, actually. I think.
It is. Yeah, I agree.
I know what place is.
Yeah, I mean, writing about Whitby, I thought, okay, I might get some of the technical details wrong, but I'm not going to fundamentally get something, I'm not going to upset people or, stereotype people or something, because it's my culture, and you sort of feel you have the liberty to do that. We should say hello to Michelle, who has joined us. She reads Lake Union authors first before all other books, so I think, frankly, we should. And the other thing I was interested in asking you two ladies about is that we all write about family. All of our books are kind of quite based around family, which is quite curious, really, because I suppose in some ways that's not really that unusual. Most of the people out there will have a family. So I wonder why, what we're giving them that appeals to them so much. And I wonder what you think, why, Imogen, is the domestic world so rich for your drama?
Because I just find families endlessly fascinating, because everybody's is different, and it doesn't matter how ludicrous you make your family or your family situation. There'll be somebody who says, "Oh, that happened to a friend of mine," because nobody knows what's going on behind somebody else's front door. It does really give you carte blanche to make up and imagine any situation that you like, and I love that. And people obviously are endlessly fascinating, and when you're with your family, you will cut them far less slack than you will cut your friends, because they're not going anywhere. Unless you have a gigantic feud with your family, you can be vile to them, and they know the next day that will still be your sister. She will still be, she might not speak to you, but she's still your sister. Whereas if you let rip like that with a friend, that might be the end of that relationship. And I think that just means that you can fire all kinds of drama at them, because they are going to hang on to each other because they're family.
Yeah, it's almost like, Tracy, the stakes are higher to a certain extent.
Yeah, I think so. And it's the dynamics of the different relationships. And also something I've been interested in is what it means to be a family, what it means to be a member of a family, and whether that is a blood, it's not always a blood thing. And what really intrigues me is societal roles. And that really ties into the whole family thing of being a mother. And that's certainly my more recent books. What does it mean to be a mother? I don't even mean if you have children, just being a maternal figure, mother of something, and how you can adopt a family role and take that role on, and yet other people who are actually mothers or fathers or brothers and sisters don't do that. So it's I think that it's all the dynamics and that human relation, and I think people, like you said, Imogen, endlessly fascinated by that dynamic, and you see it across the board of TV, and also it's not, and people coming together in a community and becoming family for each other, and almost becoming family when people don't want them to be so close, and people poking their nose in where they shouldn't. Something I write about Wall of Silence is Facebook community groups, and I think you almost sometimes these people feel like they've found their family in these online communities, and that can burst out into sort of creating a few issues, similar issues as you would find in a family. But yeah, there's so much material, isn't there, that you can find and imagine in a family dynamic, definitely.
I almost think as well that when you get to that sort of age, particularly if you've got sort of, you know, children and you're at that kind of age, that sort of middle age range, I almost think that that's just when life starts to get quite serious as well. Like issues start to get quite serious. And so if you're writing sort of, you know, or particularly suspense and thrillers, but also family drama, that there's a natural built-in tension there, because, you know, if your relationship goes wrong when you're kind of 20 years in, I think, you know, that's your whole life. That's your whole life being destabilized. And there is just naturally more tension there, I think, because there's more to lose.
Yeah. And also, like in your book, in The Last to Know, there's secrets. You know, the longer things have been going on, the more chance there is that something's been hidden. And let's face it, the secret is the essence of all these books. You know, the fact that there's something that somebody knows that somebody else doesn't. Yeah. And that's so important to these stories.
Yeah, more motivation to keep secrets as well. Yeah. So I was going to ask you, Imogen, you know, how do you, in your family, because your books they're very, what I'm always impressed about with your books is that they're gentle. It's a gentle plot, but the pages still kind of get turning, you know, so you're creating that kind of tension. Now, when I want to do that in a book, I have to, you know, kill someone, basically. My question to you is, how do you maintain that kind of that tension without killing people?
That sounds like
not in the way that you do. I think it gets back to what drives a family forward, and the fact that there's always something to find out, and there's always something that's they're very busy characters, aren't they? There's a lot going on. They don't sort of get up and watch the telly, and there's always something going on. So I think to keep the pace going, where you're not doing suspense as such, you just need to make sure that they have a busy life, and they're busy moving forward to whatever it is, the secret that they're trying to uncover. And I think that's how I try to do it. And also because I write from I usually write for two, three, maybe 4 different characters' points of view as I'm going along. You just leave a character and then move on to the next character. And obviously, often the reader wants to know what's happened to the one you've left behind. So they have to keep going, because otherwise they don't get that bit of information. It's all tricks of the trade, really, isn't it? Sure. But it's fun to write. It's fun to write because it keeps me interested as I'm going along as well.
Yeah, because you keep your characters very active as well, don't you? I mean, in the last piece, this woman, you know, she goes off to Greece kind of by herself, and I could really sort of, I mean, I've travelled quite a bit, but actually not often by myself, and so I could really sort of empathise with her, sort of setting off with quite some trepidation, but doing it anyway. And so you sort of, you know, you keep them active. And
the fear, well, certainly my greatest fear is that you would write something that wasn't very interesting. So I always find that I need to keep, the characters have to keep looking for whatever is the next thing, and that's basically how all novels work. I think everybody's got that drive forward. If you haven't got that drive forward, then you haven't got a book, really, because otherwise just what's happened to someone on a daily basis, that is just like reading your own life, isn't it? So you need all that forward momentum, no matter what kind of book you're writing.
Absolutely. We've just had a question from Amber. Hello to Amber. Thank you for coming along. Tracy, when you start writing a novel, do you work to a plan? Or are you more free-flowing?
So when I started out, I was free-flowing. I was calling it an organic writer. I just had an idea, a little idea in Notepad, did a bit of scribbling about the characters, and I would just write. And it was great. You know, it was really cathartic and exciting. But then I had a baby, and I had to write books to contract, and I realised that actually it was quicker for me to plan, because what happens when you write by the seat of your pants, or whatever, that's how we call it, pantsers in the industry, is that you often have to go back and rewrite, revise. But nowadays I do plan, because I like to have books out once or twice a year, and I find if I plan things and plot them, I can get them written quicker. But things still change. Oh my God, I can plot something completely, and something, the ending will completely change. And what I tend to do is I use the 3-act arc, which is something that screenwriters use, a very basic technique. You know, those 3 acts, the first opening act, then a big thing happens, and then the ending. And that helps me. That's like a very loose structure for me. And I have a slight idea of the main scenes that are going to happen, but they change all the time. They move around all the time, but at least I've got some kind of structure there. So when my little girl's ill or something, I can at least work on a little bit, so I know exactly what's happening in the scene. But yeah, I find it really fascinating how different authors have different approaches, because I've done both. And I love both, but for time wise, I think it's better to plan for me.
Yeah, I think I'm similar to you, Tracy, because I find the blank page just really quite scary. You know, the idea of waking up one morning and it's like, you know, you've just got like chapter 10 blank page. I find that quite terrifying. But I know you're a pantser, aren't you, Imogen? You just go.
Yeah, I am. I think I start with the concept, and I've usually got the opening scene really clear. And I know who the characters are, and I know what the story's about, and I know where it is that, you know, what I'm trying to say. But I've tried really hard to outline, and I can't, if I try and sit and think, my brain just goes all over the place. So I have my best ideas when I'm either talking or whether I'm writing. So that's how I do it, and I'm quite lucky because I write quite clean first drafts. So it's usually the first draft that goes off to the editor. But sometimes I do have to have a quick reverse if it doesn't, if I write myself into a corner. But most of the time, I think when you could write anything you like, but if you've written a particular scene, that means that from now on you have to keep going in that direction. And so I tend to, rather than going back and thinking, oh, well, if I'd done that, I would have done it differently, I just think, okay, so that's where I put myself now, what they're going to do next. And most of the time it works. Just at the moment it isn't. I'm 70,000 words into my current work in progress. I've no idea how it's going to end. I've set up this massive climax. It's going to be fantastic. But after that, I'm completely stuffed. I've no idea. So it doesn't always work.
Okay. Because Julie has commented that Julie Valerie has commented that she's also a planner and a plotter, because it saves time when writing and rewriting. So do you do a lot of rewriting then, Imogen? Do you sort of find you're rewriting as you go, or is it?
I don't do any rewriting.
Wow.
I write every day. I write about 1,000 words, never more than 2,000 words a day. At the beginning of the next day, I reread what I've written so I can remember what it is I wrote, and then start again. And then I get to the end, and then what I do is I then go back to the beginning and make sure sometimes the characters develop as I'm going along, so I might give them a particular something that they hadn't got at the beginning because I hadn't thought of it. So I'll then go back in and just add that back in.
Things in.
Generally, the first draft is the draft that gets published, really.
Wow, that's amazing. I love to be like that. I would say my first drafts are so toxic. Even when I've planned them, to be honest, they're so toxic. It's just scary. You cannot be in the same room as them. It's just terrifying. So I always have to revise, even when I've planned them, before it gets to my editor.
Yeah, Tracy and I have now just like had to go off and like down.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll say bye to Julie. She's going to have her hair done, so I hope you have a lovely new hairdo, Julie. Tracy, I was reading one of your blogs that caught my attention, which was about fact becoming fiction, and it reminded me actually of a moment when we were on our writers' retreat, which I've gone on about quite a lot today. When I literally wrote this line. Yeah, well, I do. Yeah, well, I wrote this line still in the last to know, which was about these dead bugs, and as I wrote it, these little insect wings, like dead insect wings, floated down and landed on my keyboard, and I had one of those totally like ooh chilly. I had to come out of the room, wait a little minute, and then come back in again because it was really quite spooky. And I was just wondering, I know that something like that has happened to you, Tracy. Do you have those little moments where what you're writing sort of feels like it's alarmingly coming true?
Yeah, well, I'm just trying to think of what example did I write about?
No, it was the blog post was actually about snow. It was about how you were writing, and then
of course, that's the one. So one of my novels, Family Secret, is based. It's all. I always said I want to write a winter novel with lots of snow and lots of ice, and that was my icy novel. And I was writing it, I think, in the like spring, and we weren't expecting snow, and it just started snowing. It was really bizarre. It was just really, really snowy. I think sometimes in the UK we do get random snow in like April, without realising it. That really, it kind of freaked me out. It was, I remember I did a video of it for readers and posted it and stuff, and it was just a really bizarre experience. And I think sometimes you can sort of attach spirit, this is meant to be, it's what's happening. But it's like the universe was telling me I should be writing this icy novel. But it was really helpful because I was able to take pictures, look at the quality of ice. It's a really bizarre thing, look at the snow and everything. But yeah, that was a sort of surreal experience. Yeah. Have you had anything like that, Imogen?
No, I'm feeling really alive now. I haven't had any spooky experiences or anything.
Well, that's because you go there first. You go and have a lovely holiday in Greece, and then you write about it. So you're doing it the other way around. That's probably why your first drafts are much better, because you actually do the work up front.
Yeah, do the research. Yeah.
Well, we've been chatting for half an hour, ladies. That time has flown, so we should probably wrap up quite soon. Why don't we, before we finish, why don't you tell us what you're working on next? Because I'm sure that, everyone is quite keen to know what you've got coming out next. So, Imogen, what are you working on, if you can find the ending for it?
So, yeah, if I can find the ending. So this one, it's a long way off, is this one. But the basis of the story is that a family go into a house to rescue a cat after their father/father-in-law has died, and under the bed, they found a suitcase with a serious amount of money in it. So they have to decide between themselves what they're going to do with it, and obviously they can't. So that's the one I'm writing at the moment. But the next one out will be coming out in April, and that's about a couple of women who work very hard to try and escape from the hometown that they live in because they want to be gone from there. And then they each have a separate disaster which draws them back, and it's about dealing with how they heal themselves, really. Again, set by the seaside.
Oh, I love the sound of that.
Yeah, what about you, Tracy?
Oh God, I hate these elevator pictures. I always call them, it's the sort of work that you have to do if you're stuck in an elevator with someone and they say, what are you writing? And you have to sum it up really quickly. So my next novel, Circle of Doubt, is out in January, and it's about a mother. She's got an adopted child and everything's going perfectly, and it's set in Forest Grove, the same community as Wall of Silence. And then this new glamorous family moves in, and she is convinced that the mother is the birth mother of her child and is there to take her child away. So it's that kind of, what would you do if you'd adopted a child and you think, there's a birth mother coming back to get her. So yeah, it's that same suspense, loads and loads of twists in it. So yeah, that's coming out in January. So I'm quite excited about that one.
You just said that you can't do that elevator pitch, but you basically write pitches. I mean, that's what your books have, isn't it? You're brilliant at that big hook, that thing where you go, it's this, and people go, yeah, I understand exactly what this book is going to be about. That's great. I mean, do you work on that? Do you sort of hone it before?
Yeah, I've learned, and I've talked about this loads to other authors, that it's the hook. And I think for me as a reader, I don't know if you readers listening, it's just that hook that draws you in. And I like to start with a what if. What if this happened? How would people react? How would you react? How would me as a normal person react to this massive grenade that's been thrown into the middle of my life? And I think if you get that, I think our sort of genre commercial writing, it can really help to have that kind of hook.
How about you, Jo? What are you on at the moment?
Well, The Last Snow has only just come out, like literally this week, so that's all feeling quite fresh. I have written a first draft of something during lockdown, which is, I can't really say too much about it because my first drafts are not as lovely as yours. This is going to go through quite a lot more work before it's ready to be seen. But basically, it started when I was on the bus one day, coming back from a crime writers conference, actually, where we probably all saw each other last year, obviously. And I drove past this girls' school, which is set up on a cliff overlooking the sea, and it's quite an austere school. And I just looked at it and I thought, that would be a fantastic place for a novel. And so that is basically what I've written. So it's about a girl. It's actually set a little bit quite a bit in the past. It's set in the past, and it's about a girl who's a servant, and she is sent undercover as a boarder at this English girls' school in order to find out what she can about a murder.
Wow, that sounds brilliant.
It's like a sort of weird, dark Harry Potter, really, but without, the dragons and probably without the movie franchise as well, I strongly suspect. But anyway, that was a fairly random comparison to make about myself. Quite honestly, I'm slightly uncomfortable that I just did that. Anyway, never mind. Ladies, thank you so much, Tracy, Imogen. I really enjoyed our chat, and.
Oh, she's frozen. She's about to say goodbye.
We're back. That's all right. I thought it was like just finish, ladies. I'm cutting you off. So I will say thank you, and I will say goodbye to Tracy Buchanan and Imogen Clark, and to everyone on the Lake Union authors page. Bye bye.
Thanks, Jen.